Cross ventilation, of course, it all depends on where do we create our openings, on what type of openings, whether they're up high on the wall of a house or down low, or how do we use different shutters for windows to direct airflow. This has to do a lot with design. I wish I could stand here for the rest of the day and talk about these things, but fortunately for you, I'm not. So you get the picture, however. When talking about ridge vents, these are things that we've been doing for quite some time now, not only in the Mediterranean, but throughout the world. We have these openings on the top, on the roof of the building, on the upper level of a building. Hot air rises, okay? So if it's being pushed by colder air, it needs an escape route. This is going to create this cross-ventilation effect much better. It's going to cool our house. So they are rather cheap and painless to implement. We can see the nice incorporation of a renewable energy source, photovoltaic, to run a fan, a roof fan. So these turbine vents can be used in very innovative ways. Obviously, one of the things that we cannot neglect, and this better be done from the very beginnings when building a home, is good insulation. All right? Now, one would think that insulation is more of a concern for colder climates, but I dare differ. There are many materials that we can incorporate in the house: double glazed windows, low E glazing in windows. These are different key terms that we often use when we talk about insulation and how to thermally isolate a house. We need to provide an airtight envelope in a home. And for those who are not believers, yes, even in summer conditions or in warmer climates, we do have a lot of exchange from the roof. We can see how about 30% of the heat exchange goes in and out through the roof. So a good insulation of our roof, it's primary, so primary importance. And we can see that our windows, of course, become very important under hot conditions. Air leakage, it's much less for us. So now we can use different features in a home. We can use what we call water features to create cooling effects. Now one can very easily come and say, well, we do not have any water to drink. Should I keep using these water features? I didn't propose to build Olympic-sized pools to have these cooling effects, but we can have some small and rather aesthetically pleasing features, small fountains or reflection ponds, if we can afford that, to cool our house because of this evaporation effect that is created. Of course, there is a multitude of measures that we can take. Some colleagues and I are currently looking into this concept of green roofs, for instance. Green roofs, they are, yeah, we grow tomatoes on rooftops. Not quite, despite the fact that we are investigating urban food production as well through this measure. It can be used, though, as an insulation, okay, for the roof structure. And it can serve a dual purpose. It can also it can alleviate the so-called heat island effect. Not only green roofs can do that, but making use of the texture and color of our homes, we can also mediate the temperature in cities, especially when we're talking about places. This is the first time I've been to Malta, and I sort of knew how it was going to look like, but I was surprised still. It's tightly packed, at least the area where we're staying. So I suppose that I would expect that you would be witnessing the heat island effect quite intensely. So the use of highly reflective roofs, for instance, can increase how much sun is reflected back into the atmosphere and not kept into the tarred roofs that I've seen. For instance, dark colors, they absorb and they keep the heat. If we use lighter colors, we can reflect much of that heat increase our energy efficiencies. Of course, the use of trees and grass and white paints and whatnot can also help towards that direction, as opposed to gravel, or as opposed to, I've seen, for instance, do we have any one of those pointers? I've seen tar and gravel on many of the roofs here. We're going to see that the albedo, as we say, it's very low for those materials. Basically, a lot of the heat that comes to us from the sun is being kept near the surface. So that doesn't do very much for energy efficiency. And of course, being in such a sunny climate, at least Cyprus experiences way more than 300 days of sunshine every year. We can make use of natural lighting, using, of course, low E-glazing windows to alleviate heat gain, but we can use natural lighting instead of relying only on electricity to achieve that. We can use reflective surfaces, we can use skylights and whatnot. Some pictures provided to me by an architect friend show some very nice examples there of how natural lighting can be used. Now, taking a look on how energy is used in a home and what type of greenhouse gas are emitted from a home, we can see that the lion's share is taken by heating and cooling, for instance, when it comes to energy use, at about 40%, with water heating coming in a second place, and on a first place when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. That is something to keep in mind. And on the lower side, we're going to see some things such as appliances on standby. Now, and other appliances, for instance. It brings me to the best advice that one can give. I am sure you know this. I am not sure whether you practice this. I know I do not practice this. Best advice one can give is use common sense. Turn off your appliances where not in use. Do not keep them on standby. Pretend as if you have no money to pay for electricity. All right? And I'm going to stand here for a minute. I don't know how many of you have read of our unfortunate event, the unfortunate event that took place in Cyprus last summer. We had a very nasty accident that took the life of 13 people, and at the same time, it took out of commission our biggest electricity production plant. All right? And essentially, we were called in the middle of a very hot and grueling summer to cut back on electricity demand. We did it. I don't know how, but we did it. But guess what? Now that we started buying electricity from elsewhere, now that we started bringing generators, mobile generators from Greece and from Israel, we went back to our old habits. So this piece of advice, it can be done, and it can significantly contribute towards our goals. Now I'm going to focus on the following four with that sequence of importance. Cyprus, as well as Malta, lie in a part of the world that has a lot of global irradiation. The electricity that we can get from the sun, or the energy that we can get from the sun, is one of the highest throughout the world. And we should learn how to make use of that.